Remarkably, we're now on to the 7th book of the Bible, and this is the book of Judges, and today we're doing chapters 1 and 2. This appears to pick up immediately after the death of Joshua, and the Israelites saying who's going to be in charge and all the rest of it, and then these judge people emerge. Not judges in the sense of funny wig and hitting the order business. This is judges more like military leaders, as I gather it, who become sort of heads of society, which is a little bit odd as well, because not that long ago we were talking about a king of Israel emerging and what that was going to be, but that's clearly alluding to something later on, because for now at least we have these judges rather than kings, and evidently done with the likes of Moses and Joshua. It was also implied recently, or it stated that the land had peace, and it sounded like there was going to be no more fighting, at least for a while. And we'll come back to it, but this is a little bit Tarantino-esque in terms of timescale, how this is panning out. But immediately we're straight into some battling, and the tribe of Judah are having to pick up and go and have a whacking great battle to drive out Canaanites. This involves someone called Adoni-Bezek, who apparently has nothing to do with Star Wars, but ends up getting his thumbs and big toes cut off. The weirdness continues a little bit. There is actually a little bit of useful context for that, because this Adoni-Bezek chap talks about how there were 70 kings who also had their thumbs and big toes cut off, who were gathering scraps at his table, suggesting he'd enslaved them or something. So in a very short section, it seems to allude to this Adoni-Bezek guy having done some horrendous things to lots of other people, and now he's getting his comeuppance. And he seems to be even recognising that this is God's punishment for what he's done. But that's pretty much it. He's taken to Jerusalem and he dies. It's a bit odd, but I think that seems to be a very small fragment of a very big story, but we don't know the rest of the context. Between that mention of Jerusalem, there's also mention that Judah, the tribe of Judah, has to attack the city of Jerusalem and burn it to the ground. It's the first biblical references to Jerusalem, which is it's interesting in the sense that it's still there, and obviously it's significant for a reason. This starts to begin to build on why that is, I suppose. There is, of course, a weird bit to this, in that the Israelites have just finished setting fire to Jerusalem. They then move on to the city of Hebron. You may recall that some videos ago, the city of Hebron was given to Caleb, and was also both a city of refuge for people who'd accidentally killed someone with an axe or something, and for the Levites to live in as well. But the way the timescale reads, as you're going through it, Joshua has died, then the Israelites attack the city of Jerusalem, set fire to it, then they go back to Hebron and they have to take that. And then mention comes back in at this point that Caleb says he's going to give his daughter to whatever general takes over the city. So it's taken place after Joshua, but links back to before Joshua. And I think at this point it starts to emerge that, okay, so the story is not going sequential anymore. We've gone full Tarantino. It's a little bit head-scratchy, that. But then I guess it would make sense that someone who wrote the book of Joshua wrote an account of what happens, and someone else who wrote the book of Judges, the tradition suggests it's a guy, Samuel, who's going to write another book later on, but don't know, don't think we really care. Certainly not at this stage anyway. And they've both written accounts, and then they put the two together. So this bit goes non-sequential, it would seem. But interesting nonetheless, and things seem to agree. And I guess there's an argument that people wouldn't have put the Bible together with two different stories that conflict, maybe. But interesting context at least, anyway. There's also some context in this, for example, chapter 2, verse 7, which suggests that this is written well after the events. So Joshua seemed to be written kind of at the time, but this Judges part makes reference to people having served Joshua throughout his whole lifetime, and then the elders that succeeded Joshua through all their lifetime as well, sounding like this is written a lot later. That also ties into a mention that another generation of Israelites appears. This is only in chapter 2, and that they haven't seen the things that the original Israelites saw, and their parents haven't passed this down the generations, which suggests it's more than one generation removed, because surely if your parents saw it, they told the kids. So I'm not sure if we're now talking grandkids and even further on. But either way, there are all sorts of problems, and certainly more than one reference in this part alone, just to the fact that this is written quite a bit later. Whether that means we need to do anything different with it, I don't know. Don't think it matters. Going to carry on anyway and just keep an open mind on that, because that is different to what we have been reading, at least in terms of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and all the rest of it seem to be written broadly around about that time. This does not. There was a somewhat amusing part following on from that, in that it's talking about these next generations of Israelites who've forgotten about God and haven't seen the miracles and all the rest of it. They have taken up worshipping the Baals, the Baals, the God guy we talked about earlier who doesn't exist and all the rest of it. But the Bible actually references it as the Baals, as in, we're going to stick with Baal, Daddy Baal, Mummy Baal, Baby Baal, and you've got like the Baal family almost. So it's odd it seemed to suddenly express it in that context, because I thought Baal was an individual terrible god, but referring to it as the Baals. Don't know, but chuckled anyway. It does seem though that it's taken 5 minutes or some generations, not very much has happened, and suddenly it's all going wrong already in chapter 2 of the bit after Joshua's died. And this is where the judges part comes in, because it sounds like God takes pity on the Israelites because they don't do as they're told, and then they start getting attacked by all sorts of people and they're starting to lose because God is not backing them up. So it seemingly suggests that God feels a little bit bad for them, all their groaning. So he brings forth these judges. I assume that's one at a time sequentially, the military leaders. They then seem to sort of stabilise things, but only for the lifetime of the judge. So when the judge dies, it all goes back again, and the Israelites are sinning worse than they were in the first place. So for all the effort that Joshua went to get them into the promised land and tell them you need to do all this and all the rest of it, it hasn't lasted very long, and the whole thing is now falling apart again. And once again, all through bad behaviour and just not following the pretty straightforward rules. That's not really where I expected this to go. I don't know where I expected this to go particularly, but I didn't expect it to immediately fall apart again within 2 chapters. But there we have it. That seems to be the way this is heading now. So people, I guess, alluding back to the whole idea of Genesis, the people are that terrible that it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to go off and do weird, terrible things, especially involving Baal. But then admittedly, part of me is kind of amused that Baal is back just because it's a hilarious name for a made-up god. And it's remarkable just how crap people can be. So yeah, straight into book 7, and already it's all going wrong and hitting the fan, so we'll have to carry on and see what happens next.